We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello, welcome to the Daily Red, your lunchtime catch-up on all things Liverpool FC on a Thursday on which nothing is still happening, but we have had little bits of news. So, James Jimbo Pearce has said that the plan for Arne Slot's announcement was always to have it around the start of pre-season rather than around the start of June. That makes sense, and I'm not sure why anybody's overly bent out of shape that there hasn't been a whole load of stuff on social media or on the club website so far. We all know he's gotten the job, he signed his contract, he started work on June the 1st. Just let him get on with it. There's no reason to hear from him as yet. We'll hear from him when the time is right, and that's absolutely fine. Darwin Núñez scored a hat-trick of... You could call them tap-ins. I call them predatory first-time finishes in Uruguay's pre-Copa America friendly. They're the type of chances you really want Darwin taking, and people will dismiss them as other tap-ins. Most of Haaland's goals are tap-ins. They're the type of chances that Darwin missed far too often over the past 2 years. So if he can start putting them away, we'll see his goal contributions jump significantly. Is he ever going to be a completely clinical number 9? No, he's never going to be Robbie Fowler. He just won't be that player. But he doesn't need to be. Like, he really doesn't need to be that player. If Darwin even becomes an average finisher, he's going to get 30 to 35 goals a season, just as an average finisher, with the likes of Trent, Mo, Alexis and Dominic in the team providing chances for him. So let's not worry too much. Just continue to get yourself in the right spaces. If we continue to create chances the way we have, he will get a lot of goals. Will he miss some? Absolutely. He's, like I say, he's never going to be a great finisher. Gareth Southgate has cut Curtis Jones and Jarrell Quansah from the England squad, so they will not be part of the England squad for the Euros. They might still play in tomorrow's friendly. I hope they do. It'd be nice for them to both get capped before they leave and go on their summer breaks, but they will not be part of the England squad for the Euros. Neither will James Maddison, it appears, and there are still, I think, 2 or 3 more to be cut from there. What else do we have here? Curtis Jones has one hurdle to leap to become Ginny Wijnaldum of Arne Slot's Liverpool. That is a piece by Young Henrold on This is Anfield. The problem, Young Henrold, is that there is no Ginny Wijnaldum in how Arne Slot sets his team up. And he plays a double pivot, so Alexis is almost certain to be one of those players, and you just can't have an Alexis Curtis double pivot if you really want to win things. The best role for Curtis would be as the backup to Alexis in that kind of controlling role, but you still need that high-end defensive midfielder. Curtis can be a great squad player. He will never be Ginny Wijnaldum for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's not the same level of athlete as Ginny was, and that's absolutely vital. And number two, he doesn't have that same burst that Ginny had. He's not slow by any means, but Ginny could accelerate away from players very, very quickly. And that allowed him both as a ball carrier to burst away from people, but also in the early season at Liverpool, the first season at Liverpool, and then obviously in the European Cup semi-final against Barcelona, it allowed him to outrun the opposition from midfield into the opposing box and get there with time and space. Curtis doesn't have those attributes. Curtis is an underrated player. He's an underappreciated player. And he has developed the off-ball side of his game really well. But Curtis's biggest strength off-ball is his ability to press. Ginny wasn't a vital part of our pressing system. Ginny and Fab would sit behind our pressing group, which would be the two fullbacks, Henderson, and the front three. So there's a lot of differences between what Curtis does and what Ginny does. Ginny was a good presser, don't get me wrong. It's just he wasn't asked to press as frequently. When he needed to, he would. When the opportunity arose, he would. But if we were just going to pin a team in and press them relentlessly, Ginny would sit back with Fab in front of the two centre-backs and the other six would go and hem them in. And that's just how it worked. Saw this on Sky, thought it was interesting. 6 Premier League clubs face having to sell players before the end of June to comply with profit and sustainability rules. So Chelsea, Aston Villa, Newcastle, Everton, Nottingham Forest, and Leicester. So I thought, why don't we have a quick look at each of those teams, at each of their squads, and see if there's anybody that we could potentially nab. Because there's certainly some really good players. If not all of them, certainly most of them. So let's start with Chelsea. The first obvious one for me would be a Trevoh Chalobah as a depth centre-back who can also help in midfield, has loads of experience playing as a defensive midfielder. I think he's an underrated, underappreciated player, would obviously help with the homegrown quota as well. And at 24 is a good age that you can get 2-3 years out of him as a squad player and then move him on and not lose any money, potentially make money on a deal like that. From a talent point of view, Carney Chukwuemeka is interesting, but he has had quite a few injuries, and that would probably rule him out. Levi Colwill is the really obvious one that everybody will point to, but I just don't see them being willing to sell him. Now, in terms of the players they have out on loan, there's one name that jumps out to me as somebody that I think we should be looking at, and that's Andre Santos, who spent the first half of last season on loan with Nottingham Forest, and for some reason got no opportunities under Steve Cooper, then went to Strasbourg. As an all-round midfielder that you could mould into whatever you want him to be, and he will be exceptional at it, I think he's one we should be looking at. Now, Chelsea, I think, paid 14, 15 million for him 18 months ago. So you'd imagine there's probably 2 seasons worth of amortization gone off of that sum. So maybe they've got about 9 million left on the books for him. In which case, could we somehow steal him for, 30? Which would be 21 million profit for them on their books. 15 million in actual profit, but 21 million in terms of on the books profit. He is one I would very much like us to have a close look at. Next up then is Aston Villa. Truthfully, there's not a whole lot here that you would really want. I mean, I know a lot of people will say Diaby. I think those people just didn't really watch him play for the majority of last season or the times he was at Leverkusen. He's very much a player that looks great in clips, but otherwise is quite frustrating and very inconsistent. A lot of people will say Ollie Watkins, obviously, but he turns 29 later this year. It will be a silly thing to do. Boubacar Kamara is the best player at the club, but he's currently out with a torn ACL. Now, they did buy him they did sign him on a Bosman, so he didn't cost anything on their books. So everything they get for him, in theory, is pure profit. Would you take the risk of buying him as he recovers from an ACL tear? Maybe, if it was below what his actual price would be. I think based on the prices we saw players move for last summer, someone like Boubacar Kamara, fully fit, at his best, probably a 75 to 80 million pound player. So if you could nab him for, somewhere in that 45 to 50 range, even with the ACL tear, because an ACL tear now is not, it doesn't even register all that often. Yeah, it'll take him maybe the guts of a season to get back to his best level, but if you can get him for, 60 cents against the dollar, as they say, or 60 pence against the pound, or 60 cents against the euro, if you will, then maybe that's a deal worth doing, but it's probably not something we would consider it. And truthfully, it's probably not something they'd consider either. Jacob Ramsey's another one that's very, very talented, but he did just miss most of last season through injury. And I think they'd be mental to let him go because he is a tremendous footballer. Newcastle United. There's a few here. There is a few here. Now, the obvious ones are Isak, no chance. They're going to want 120 million for him. And Guimaraes, who we know has the 100 million buyout, but doesn't really fit in a double pivot with Alexis. But you could play Alexis as a 10 and Guimaraes in a double pivot with a ball winner, but I think that's very unlikely. I know a lot of people will say Anthony Gordon. Just settle down on Anthony Gordon. He's had one good season, not even a great season, one good season in his entire career. He has more yellow cards than either goals or assists in his entire career. So can we just settle down on a fella that at Everton was basically a goal every 11 games, and at Newcastle is a goal every 4 games. For his career, he's a goal every 7.5 games. Can we just settle down on Anthony Gordon? I understand people are very excited about the fact that he had 10 goals and 10 assists. But, let's look at the bigger picture. He played 48 games, which is a lot. He had 12 goals and 10 assists. 12 goals and 10 assists. They're not earth-shattering numbers. Not by any stretch. In nearly 4,000 minutes.
We took it all. we brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become? Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
He's a good player who's had one good season. By the way, he got as many yellow cards last season as he did goals, and more yellow cards than he got assists. He had 12 yellow cards and a red card last season. That would need to be significantly reined in before you'd even consider making a move for him. He's also quite streaky. Like, he is quite a streaky goal scorer. Just there's not a consistent churn of numbers there. Good player, but certainly not someone we should be looking at this point. Lewis Hall, on the other hand, could be. Now, the issue here is that Newcastle are paying $28 million to buy him this summer. So you'd need to pay above that. The difference is they can amortize that $28 million across 5 years and put it on their books at, $5.6 million a year. If you were to give them, say, 35 for him as a lump sum, that just goes on 1 year and helps them financially. It basically represents a 30 million boost to this season, even if they've got money coming off of the following seasons. I do very much like Tino Livramento, but we don't need to do that. Unless Trent were to leave or move into midfield, then Tino Livramento could make some sense. Moving on from the tune, Everton, there's only two players at Everton you'd look at. That's Amadou Onana and Jared Branthwaite. And Branthwaite is going to be significantly overpriced for a lad that's had one season in the Premier League. Now, he did have a good year before that at PSV Eindhoven, but you would need a lot more body of work to justify paying the 75 million or whatever it is that Everton want for him. The other player there, Onana, he's super talented and he's massive and he's got enormous potential. But people have decided he's a defensive midfielder and he just isn't. He's a box-to-box midfielder. One of the reasons Dyche was leaving him out of the team during the season was because he was lax in his defensive work. And positionally, he's not great. He doesn't read the game all that well. These are things that he can develop and work on. But what makes him a big-time talent is his ability to go box-to-box and be a destroyer box-to-box. But, I shouldn't be surprised because anytime we see a big midfielder with great athleticism, they get pigeonholed as defensive midfielders, like Declan Rice, who's not a defensive midfielder. Stefan Bajcetic, who's not that big, but again, people look at him and think, oh, defensive midfielder. No, box-to-box. Patrick Vieira is the best example. People had this idea that Patrick Vieira was this sitting destroyer who protected his defence, and he wasn't at all. He played with Manu Petit, who did that job for him. Then he played with Gilberto Silva, who did that job for him. Then he went to Juve, and he played with Emerson, who did that job for him. Vieira was always best when he was free to go box-to-box, and Onana is no different. So I wouldn't be against the signing of Onana, but I don't think him and Alexis is a particularly ideal pairing, because you're basically telling Alexis, by the way, you're the six again. And we've just seen that that's a complete waste of his time and everybody else's time. We'll do Leicester City next. I mean, Keenan Dewsbury Hall's the best player at the club, but he's not someone we need. I do very much like the left back that they have who's out on loan, Victor Christensen. He had a really good loan with Bologna, helped them to get top 4. I don't know if they have an option to buy. If they do, they'll probably take it, although it might be too high for them, even with Champions League. I think I said top 4. They finished 5th, but Italy got the extra spot. I do very much like Victor Christensen. I think he's the profile of left back. If we want a traditional up and down the flank left back that we'd be looking at. So I wouldn't be against a move for him. That might help them a little bit. If we wanted that left centre-back type, I mean, I like Callum Doyle, but they have to buy him and then they have to sell him straight away. And you know City will do something in terms of buybacks and all that kind of stuff. So to make that too complicated, that's pretty much it for them. James Justin I really like, but he's had so many injuries that we wouldn't do that. Yeah, Victor Christensen would be the only one at Leicester that would really be worth. I mean, if we signed Dewsbury Hall, it wouldn't be a bad thing, but I mean, you might as well sell Curtis Jones if you're doing that, because then you've got Alexis and Dewsbury Hall for that controlling role, and there's no real spot for Curtis. And I'm sure people would say, well, Curtis is a better footballer than Dewsbury Hall. I'm not sure he is. I think he's got a higher upside than Dewsbury Hall, but Dewsbury Hall is like 26, 25 maybe. So he's just more developed than Curtis. He's got a lot more experience than Curtis as well. And finally then Nottingham Forest. And I think there's 3 here who are worth a look. Murillo is the obvious one that people have mentioned before. He would play left back for us, I'd imagine, rather than centre back, and kind of slot into back 3, play that Gertrude role, but on the left. And I think he'd be really good at that. Danilo, the midfielder, he's outstanding. And again, if we wanted to play Alexis as a 10, he would fit really well in double pivot. I don't think him and Alexis is an ideal double pivot. If you wanted Ginny Wijnaldum, though, this is your man. Like, this is your Ginny Wijnaldum replacement. If you were looking to rebuild Liverpool's 2018 to 2020 team from scratch, this is your Ginny Wijnaldum, without a shadow of a doubt. The other one then, if we did want to go and maybe buy a number 10 and play Dominic on the left, which I think is definitely a good option, will be Morgan Gibbs-White, who is genuinely fantastic. Like a genuinely fantastic player. And he has put together 2 tremendous seasons for Forest in the Premier League after a great season before that for Sheffield United, where, I mean, him and Iliman and Jai might have been at that time the best combo in the Championship. They didn't get promoted. They got promoted a year later, but he was brilliant for them. This past season, he had 6 goals and 10 assists from midfield in about 3,600 minutes, which, you know, when you consider what he's got around him and where they were in the league, he's not playing in a team that's competing at the top end, competing for Europe. He's not playing with a whole lot of teammates that could play at that level other than Danilo, Murillo, maybe 1 or 2 others. Otherwise, it's a fairly grim squad. The year before, he had 5 goals and 8 assists in all competitions in about 3,400 minutes. So that's consistency in a poor team. And he's got a great work ethic. He's overcome all the injury issues that he had early in his career. Like, you go back and look, at the kind of 1920, 2021 season, the seasons rather, he missed a combined 41 games in those 2 seasons and hasn't missed a game through injury since. So that's really promising. Morgan Gibbs White could be interesting. If Forest paid 25 in add-ons 2 years ago, so 10 million at least will have dropped off the books. I don't know what way the add-ons work in terms of sitting on your books. Let's say they've paid 5 million in add-ons thus far, or 8 million in add-ons. There could be as much as 23 million. He's, well, based on the market, he's probably a 60 million player, but if you could get him for like 45, given his age, given his profile, given that incredibly inventive nature of his, I think he could be a really good get. He's not necessarily my first choice. I would rather buy Olise, but if we got Gibbs White, I'd be very happy. I would be very happy. But if I was buying one player from that club, I'd probably buy Danilo, because I think he's the most malleable. And as I said, if you wanted to move to a 4-3-3, then having Alexis and Danilo either side of a 6 would be a great start. Alexis obviously as a 10 with Danilo and a 6 is another great option for 4-2-3-1. But he is tremendous. Really, really tremendous player. Right, AnfieldIndex.com. What have you got for me? So Jimbo talking about the slot announcements and unveilings and all that. There's a piece about Ederson, a piece about Diogo Jota is part of a Liverpool trio who are taking their first steps into coaching. Adrian and Joel Matip are also working towards their UEFA B licenses. There's a piece about Kelleher and Vandenberg. There's a piece about a report linking us to Gertruda, which is, I believe, just a lazy report, as we always see. Well, this manager managed this player, so he must want him again. Podcast-wise, there's the Scouted that came out, where we looked at every Premier League team's needs. There's another one recorded, which will be out this weekend, or might be out today or tomorrow. Last night, we recorded part 2 of the Transfer Committee series. So it's Harry Sethi, myself, Dan Kennett, and Mo Chatra. And we looked at the defence, because I think everybody would agree Liverpool's defence is in need of quite the drastic shake-up. And, we had a good look at that and picked some players we think make sense. We'll have part 3 next week, and hopefully we wrap it up in 3, because Dan goes on holidays in the middle of the month, and we can't do it without him. So we do have to wrap it up next week. So next Wednesday we will record part 3, all going well. Right, folks, that's going to do me for today. I will see you all tomorrow. Take care of yourselves and look after each other. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.